Welcome back to another edition of Up in Flames. I'm your host, but more importantly, your advocate, Abby Bolt. Now, today we have a pretty controversial topic and a really special guest that I am I'm really impressed and humbled by the fact that she is willing to speak up. And what I want everyone to realize is this is not about names. This isn't about the who, the what crew, the what Hotshot crew. This is not about that. So we removed a lot of things that were very identifying like that. It was kind of a bummer because we had some really great discussions about more details of her firefighting background, and then also some of her personal hobbies, her athletic abilities, and some things that she does. And the more we got to talk about it, the less safe she felt. We know that there are going to be a lot of people out there, but that by listening to this, just because of the hubbub that happens, they're going to know who she is. They're going to know what crew it is. I get that. And she already knows, she's already dealing with an extreme amount of retaliation. And do me a favor out there, you guys, let's not make it any worse. This is all about awareness and transparency and just getting each other to think a little deeper and, try a little harder when these sensitive situations come up. This isn't even just about women and sexual assault. Okay, this is about having the guts to speak up when somebody isn't playing it right, or there's a conflict, or there's a safety issue, and how we're going to handle that. This one just happened to be a sexual assault, so it got a lot more complicated than it might have otherwise, and it showed how we still have no idea how to handle it. It's really pretty sad, and it's going to take some creative, thoughtful leaders that really care out there for both sides of situations like this. You'll hear her talking that it really screwed up everything for the entire crew, for her career, and it's messing up even worse now. And it didn't have to be that way. So dig deep. Don't turn this into a big crap talking thing. Turn this into a how can we do this better thing, and have some respect for her for being willing to talk about it and get us to think a little more. So with that, let's move forward and meet her and appreciate this. And, for all my friends out there who are great leaders and you're trying to do it right, I appreciate you. If this makes you wonder if you're not doing it right, take that under consideration and figure out a way to do a little better. All right, with that, here we go. Okay, so today I am with, and she has been a hotshot for how many years now?
2 seasons.
Okay, and any other firefighting experience with that?
Oh, yes. I started in 2013 in prescribed fire. I did it a few years in the Southeast before moving into the federal world in 2016. And I've also done a couple engine seasons with the feds as well.
Nice. All with the same agency?
No, I've floated around a little bit. I've done one season with Park Service, one with BLM, and the rest with Forest Service.
Good deal. Yeah, I think it's best to kind of mix it up a little bit and get a feel for all the different places. And now, why in the world? So, like your first year, right? You're getting a taste for it, but tell me what it is that you love. And for everybody, sorry, I didn't really do a proper introduction, but we're talking a wildland firefighter here who is dealing with some BS in the agency, and I just kind of want to introduce you to her, give you her background before we get too far into it. But tell me what it is about fighting wildland fire, doing this job that made you stick with it, and why you want to stay at it.
Yeah, so I think my roots tend to be a little unique in that I started in the prescribed fire, and I was really, really passionate about the ecological impacts of fire and using it as a tool. And, that was kind of my foundation before I got into suppression. And I still kind of have a twofold mission in fire. I really think that ecological impacts and how we manage fire is really, really important. But then there's also just the job itself, the challenge, the variety, the constantly pushing yourself to be stronger, a better leader, all of those types of things. Fire's just really got it all. And of course, it takes you to beautiful places.
Yeah, there's definitely those days where you're like, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do this. This is crazy. people. I got to a point where I didn't want to travel or camp unless I was on a fire or something, because I got to see so much great stuff that it was like, that was my job. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So then you started out more with the prescribed stuff, and then when was your first year of or what was your first job of full fire?
That was working on an engine.
Right on. So you were on engines, and then you eventually ended up on a hotshot crew, right?
Yes.
So tell me your interpretation, your kind of elevator pitch on what is a hotshot crew.
So you'll often hear of hotshot crews related to the Navy SEALs of fire, right? They're a very elite crew, really stacked with technical qualifications, a lot of technical competencies, and then also, in leadership, we have in fire, we have the 3 operational leadership values, right? Duty, integrity, and respect. And I think hotshot crews are really, I think their mission is to really embody those values like nobody else in fire, a very strong sense of duty, a lot of integrity, and a lot of respect for people they're working with and the job that they're getting done. They typically end up in some of the shittiest parts of the fire, the assignments that most people don't want, hiking the steepest terrain and sleeping in the dirt and things like that. So that's kind of the fun part too.
Yeah, it's funny to hear somebody say that's the fun part too, but that's kind of what sucks us all into that. That is the thing I always loved about Wildland Fire was it was never a real job. It's just the cool job that you got when you were younger, and you got to hang on to that job, and it was just like you said, you're sleeping in the dirt, working in the dirt, just seeing all kinds of great terrain. So, but I love the way you talk about the leadership abilities and the duty, respect, and integrity and everything of what a hotshot crew is supposed to embody. And so that kind of brings me to why we're talking today. Do you feel like your last few months, your experience with a crew or with crews, do you feel like they have been, do you feel like they've been displaying those values?
Absolutely not. And I don't think that's always intentional. As a hotshot crew, you spend a lot of time with each other. You're bonded very closely, and most of the time that's great, right? But it can also cause issues that result in the need for really difficult conversations. And my last few months on a hotshot crew, it really felt like those difficult conversations were just completely avoided, more for the reputation of the crew rather than the true value of integrity or respect.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. So I'm going to let you just walk me through this, and you talk about what you feel comfortable talking about. Tell me why that is. Give me the backstory on why you're frustrated and really just deeply hurt right now by that culture that you felt so embraced by. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so I was on a new crew this summer and came in at rookie level, and within a hotshot crew, there's kind of, you need to earn your stripes. You're the bottom of the totem pole, and you need to work hard and prove that you want to be there every day. So most of the season went really well, but there was a new permanent senior on the crew who fairly early in the season, I was sexually assaulted by this person. And at first, your first instinct is to protect the crew, right? To deal with every conflict at the lowest possible level, right? So this was a really personal assault, and my first reaction was to handle it myself, right? Resolve it at the lowest possible level. And as the months wore on with this crew, I think there were some issues really manifesting for me, trying to shoulder this burden, and kind of keep it under wraps. And at the end of the crew, I chose to report what happened. It was the last month of our season when I came forward, and as soon as I reported, there was just a total shift in the way I was treated by overhead, the way I was talked to, or lack thereof. It was more like as soon as I reported this incident, I was removed from the crew and put in a little office by myself, and the overhead really did not want to talk about any of the issue at hand.
So you really just got shut down and isolated. You immediately felt like the problem.
Yes, definitely. And obviously this is I was putting myself out there to have these difficult conversations. At the end of the day, I felt like what happened to me needed to be documented on some level because it could happen to someone else too, right? And I just really put all this vulnerability out on the line, and I was really just, removed from the crew and just not received well, just really isolated in this really like traumatic step I was taking at the time.
So I was going to do like have you on video today just because it's nice to be able to see each other face to face, but just for logistics to make it easy, we're just on the phone. And now I'm kind of glad because just listening to you and, my mind starts to spin out and think about just being isolated and having the guts to speak up about something like that. Like my hands are shaking, my eyes are tearing up because like you said, you put yourself out there and you were so vulnerable with your brothers. You were hurt by a brother and it's had to be really hard for you. And not just talking today, you've been trying to do this silently at the lowest level in the most respectable way that you possibly could, trying to trust the system that is in place that's supposed to protect you and other crew members and, and the crew member that you were talking about. And now I want to just kind of hit on all of the yeah, but what questions people are going to be thinking when they hear this, because there are a lot of different factors and layers. And if you're at work, you're in the office, somebody throws you down and assaults you right there on the clock in the office, they know how to handle that. At least they know they got to call the cops, deal with it, whatever. Like, oh my God, yeah, she was on the clock and they were at work and they were on the work, on the work site. But if it's not that blatant, they don't know what the hell to do. So tell me more details about like what you shared with your superintendent so that we can understand maybe better why he didn't know how to handle this situation.
Yeah, like you said, it's pretty obvious how to handle something that's done at work and in a violent way and very, brazen like that. But that's not the reality of how sexual assault happens. And something that I've learned after it happened to me, and I started reaching out for help and looking into just some of the statistics. It's really like your chance of being assaulted, it's going to happen with someone that you trust in a private place, right? So there were just two of us, and this guy is a permanent GS5 senior on the crew, and I'm a rookie seasonal 4. And so at the end of the day, like if there's not physical wounds and things like that, there's just no proof, right? But that's something that the evidence, here's the video recording of it. There's nothing like that. It's just two of you in this room. And so, you come forward with a lack of physical evidence, but you're coming forward because you feel like it's your duty to be honest, right?
Right.
And so there's that lack of physical evidence, and this particular assault happened off the clock at a crew member's house. And of course, no one else around, not really on Forest Service time or property. So I think with it being such a severe conflict, I think, it came to Overhead's mind that like, maybe this isn't even our problem. Like, yeah, this is a guy on our crew, but, it happened somewhere else and nobody saw it. So, there is that reality that the superintendent's probably very aware of when someone comes forward with something like this.
Do you feel like they blew you off too because you had a close relationship with this person? Do you feel like they didn't take you seriously because of that as well?
Yeah. And, like I said, I've definitely learned more about it and tried to handle everything at the lowest possible level. But after I was assaulted, I actually, on 3 occasions, tried to have a direct conversation with this individual about what happened, right? Like, of course, there's self-reflection involved, and you want to make sure you're not missing something, right? So I have a conversation with this individual, and, he alludes to the fact that he's done this multiple times to other women, and the other women haven't complained. And
Wow.
just like a very core value that like it was okay to do this to people. And after those conversations with the individual, that's kind of when I came forward about everything. But it's not like, this happens and it's not like you can get away from that person, right? You're going to see them every day.
Right. And you
24 hours a day for weeks at a time.
You were putting yourself through a silent internal anguish, I can only imagine, for months. And, and you held off. And So the hard part is, and we're trying to put ourselves in the supervisor's shoes too, but you were a seasonal and the person that you reported was permanent. So it almost kind of felt like, well, yeah, they're watching out for him. And it's easier to blow off than it is to, protect that seasonal gal. I mean, they immediately isolated you, which they immediately removed you. You reported it and you got put in a little office, right? It's not like you reported it and they put him in a little office until they figured it out and kept you on the crew until they figured it out. Like, you immediately got removed. And I think that was a big mistake right off the bat, that people need to do better and they need to think harder about what they're doing, because that's what society is doing as a whole. Is the victim is immediately removed and isolated when they're the one, making a report, which, like, let's say your claim was completely crap. You were just going out to get after a guy. Doesn't matter. Like, it needs to be, why is the person reporting it? Why is the victim the one that's immediately punished? If anything else, it should go the other way around, especially if it's just like, oh, we're just innocently removing this person until we figure things out across the board. And that's something that isn't clear in a lot of places in our society. So I remember talking to you when when you were dealing with just basically being stuck in a little room by yourself, taken away from fire assignments, all this stuff. And your world changed, because it just does. It becomes your whole world and you have to figure it out. So you reported it to your overhead, who you trusted to protect you. So tell me what happened next after you got, you reported it. How did they handle it besides putting you in the room?
Yeah, I was put in this this little room, and like I said, the conversations that I tried to have with my overhead there at my base became very limited. I kind of felt like they were definitely trying to be politically correct, kind of cover your own ass, rather than having like a real difficult conversation, right? And
you went from being one of the tribe to immediately being an outsider they were terrified of.
Yeah, totally. And I think like another reason like people choose not to come forward, or that they wait to come forward, is like this really traumatic event happens to you, but then it's a whole nother traumatic event to like be completely ostracized from like what's your family, right? Like these people that you spend so much time with and like enjoy being around. And some of these people never talked to me again after I came forward.
And guys, I want you to understand that this isn't just about like, everybody's like, okay, we're talking to a gal and she was raped and, yeah. This isn't just about coming forward about something like sexual assault. You can come forward about a safety issue, about somebody on the crew who is doing things dangerously. You're worried they're going to get someone killed, or maybe they did something that did get somebody really hurt. You can be treated exactly this way. It's about being someone that is speaking up, and immediately everyone just sees you as a screaming liability instead of knowing how to deal with it. So please don't just write this off as like just some sexual assault story, because no, this is a general culture issue as a whole. So yeah, it's bigger. And especially when you get your family ripped away from you, it's people that know fire and understand the camaraderie know how damaging it can be. It's a whole, like you said, it's a whole other assault. It kills you.
Yeah. And like one message I would want people to take away from this is that like, as a leader in fire or wherever you are, it's okay to not have the answers for situations like this. It's okay to not know what to do all the time or right away or whatever, but you still have to have those conversations that will be uncomfortable, right? But that's what you signed up for, being a leader in fire. Like, you're going to have to push outside your comfort zone and really listen to people, listen to understand rather than listening to respond or defend the agency or defend a reputation or whatever. You really, yeah.
It's not just about the fire.
Yeah. For when I first reported, I really like sympathized with this guy who's been running this crew for quite a long time. It's like, man, what an awful position to be in. But you've got to step up and take it and have those hard conversations and seek resolutions or at least closure for people, right? So beyond being isolated and cut away from my crew for, a couple weeks or so, after I came forward, the overhead immediately stopped talking about rehire. So as a seasonal rookie, you're kind of rehired each season, and that was something that we talked about. You get a chance to develop your weaknesses, improve on your strengths and like kind of grow with your crew from season to season. And as soon as I came forward, the rehire was completely taken off the table. You know, even the overhead expressed to some other folks on the crew that he just really thought that this would all blow over. The senior would be back the next year, and he would have to apologize for having a quote unquote relationship with me, which this individual and I were never, you know, in some sort of like committed romantic relationship or anything like that, right? But that, you know, the overhead.
They immediately ripped everything out from under you when they write it off like that. Like, okay, well, we'll have him come back and he'll have to apologize to the whole crew for being involved with another crew member. Like that was that was their way of completely taking away all of your credibility.
Exactly.
I don't even know
reducing
if they did that.
Yeah, I don't think it's honestly something that ever crossed their mind, right? Because quite frankly, like most of these men in leadership roles, they're never going to have to deal with being sexually assaulted or raped or whatever, right? So there's really a huge empathy gap right there. Like they can't even wrap their minds around kind of what happens in those instances and how severe they are and how traumatizing they can be to individuals, right? I don't think that crosses their mind. And I think it was the easy route to reduce it to
part of me, I mean, and part of me sympathizes with that because it's like, yeah, how can we expect them to really be that empathetic? Okay, fine. But you need to look at it as like somebody reporting something difficult, no matter what it is across the board. Like you may have reported somebody dropping a tree on someone and now they don't like you anymore because you're willing to stand up and report this bad thing that happened by a crew member and you're seen as a problem. Like they've got to find a way to be empathetic to people that are having these things and to realize how many women there are like you out there who are totally silent because they are terrified of the treatment that you received afterwards. Like there's gals who they were already not doing well in a situation or in an organization and then they spoke up and it's like, yeah, here we go. You know, totally typical.
Yeah.
You went from like consistent, steady to spoke up to nothing. So if even people like you are going to be burned so bad for speaking up, how are we ever going to empower people to do this? Let alone women, how are we going to empower men? And how in the hell do we expect people to report things like life-threatening safety issues if they're afraid they're going to be shunned like this from the tribe? Like it is a complete tribal thing and it's ugly. And how in the hell are we going to improve this if we don't? I mean, this is happening to you right now. This isn't 10 years ago. This isn't 15 years ago. This is right now. They're making all these promises and they're still not handling the most simplistic thing correctly. Like they make a phone call to find out, what am I supposed to do with this employee? And the people they're calling 4 degrees away, all the way up to the Washington office, like they really don't know how to handle it either. And it seems as though no response is a safer response for them because they're like, all right, if we don't, okay, we're just going to move this file over here. She's a seasonal, right? Okay, cool. She's off for the summer or this winter. Great. Like, let's just pretend like we're not hearing this right now because maybe it'll go away. Because if we do address it, holy shit, we're going to have to like deal with her, deal with the employee. God, we might be at fault. Maybe we're not at fault. What if we say we're not at fault and then we're in trouble for that? Like it just spins completely out. And so they go quiet because you're not being talked to right now at all, right? They're just not really even coming to you and saying it's our problem or it's not our problem, neither one.
Right, yeah. And actually, like the local overhead at that base completely stopped responding to any correspondence once I was laid off. You know, it was literally like, oh, thank God she's gone. Like, we don't even have to talk to her anymore. And
they may have even been advised of that from above.
Yeah, and that's kind of scary. You know, that's not a good.
That's what worries me too. Is like
strategy.
Even if you have, you know, let's say you do have someone in a leadership position and they know in their heart what the right thing is to do, but if they're being guided from above, from HR, or ER, or civil rights, wherever it is, if they're saying like whatever you do, don't respond. Even the best-hearted leaders get misguided to not take care of their people because they've got that liability overhead laying over them. And then you've got the leaders that aren't afraid to do the right thing. They're not afraid.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to push back and take care of people. And they're very rare. And a lot of times they either get pushed out or nobody messes with them. But they are very rare. But I do know several. And watching out for their people and doing the right thing sure as heck isn't easy. But they have the guts to do it. And it does take guts. It takes guts to have employee relations or somebody give you an advisement and to say like, no, I don't think that's right. I don't think this is the right thing for this person, or, hey, you know what? We're totally screwing her over, but they've got to have the guts to say that. And they feel like if somebody from above them or in the HR or ER office tells them something, then it's off their shoulders. They're not liable for you anymore because someone above them has advised them. And that's what I see happen all the time.
Yeah. And kind of, where I'm at now, the kind of the local leadership of this crew, it sounds like they're not going to have to deal with anything anymore. As long as they denied my rehire, like, they're good to go. Everything else is going to be handled above their heads. I
just
am
don't
still
understand how they could justify not wanting to rehire you. I know you're like seasonals truly have no rights when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I don't know how they can sleep at night and explain to somebody why they're not rehiring you or why they would give you a bad reference.
Well, and the thing is, they don't have to explain it. Like, they actually never even would come out and say, yeah, we're not going to rehire you. I would ask the superintendent and his boss about my rehire status, and they would simply not answer.
Because no news is safe for them.
Yeah. So, the only way I know I'm kicked off the crew is because I just stopped getting responses. That doesn't seem to have any element of integrity or respect to it.
Now, you mentioned to me that you're not able to come back, or you're not being communicated with. And there's been a couple other crew members that aren't coming back because of that. Is that right?
Yeah. I mentioned a few of the crew members who never spoke to me once again after I came forward. But on the flip side of that, there were two who, 2 out of 18 or 19
That's a pretty big percentage, though, really, in this situation.
Yeah. One of them, I confided in this individual about the situation and to kind of bounce ideas off of him and let him know I really felt like I needed to come forward and say something. And he even warned me, he said, you already know this, but like you've seen in recent years, like what's happened to women who've come forward. He kind of gave me that warning out of concern, which, at this point, obviously he was very right. That was very valid concern. But
you had the guts to do it anyway because you know what's right.
Yeah. Still, like for me, that personal integrity is going to trump whatever bad things have happened and could still happen to me because of this.
Right. And you know what? And I look at this, it's like, okay, how are they supposed to handle personal situations? We'll call them that happen off the clock. So let's say that you were spending time with a crew member. Let's just say you're another dude. And this other crew member who's in a leadership position kept punching you, like literally physically assaulting you whenever you guys were out at night, or like if there was a crew barracks or whatever, but they beat the crap out of you, and you finally came, you're like, hey, Soup, I just want to let you know, like, so-and-so over there, like he beat the living crap out of me a few weeks ago and I just let it go. But it's like, what would the Soup do then? What do you think would happen?
Then I think it'd be a totally different animal if there was that proof, like bruises or scars or whatever that people could physically see, right? And
but even without that, even if it is like they hid it until then, but now they're just saying like, look, there was this crazy conflict, even though it was off the clock, with so-and-so over there. I just need to let you know.
It would be handled totally differently. I feel like leadership would be comfortable to sit these people down and talk about what happened, right? And have these conversations that they don't really perceive as uncomfortable because it's kind of more normal for that culture, right? Hotshots are kind of a rough and tumble crowd. People get in fights. That happens. And
there was a guy
that
worked where I did, who he was fired just for threatening another guy from the same district off the clock. Just not even like, it was before it ever even came down to physical. Like it was a really big deal for that. Mm-hmm. And that's the big difference to me. Like we're not getting it. And what you did, I know that the people you work for, I'm sure they're good people. I'm sure or you wouldn't have been there and you wouldn't have enjoyed the crew so much. Now what was in your mind? You knew that this was going to bite you. You knew it was going to be really hard. What were you thinking? You knew it was you just wanted to speak up because it was the right thing. Was there something that triggered you to do it? Were you frustrated with him? Did he say something? What were you feeling like needed to come from you reporting it to the superintendent?
Like you said, obviously the biggest thing is like, I just knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say what happened. And because of this, conversations with this individual, I'd learned that it happened other times and would probably happen again. And that cycle has to be broken somewhere, right? Like
because even if you move on silently, there might be another woman that comes to the crew later, and they need to be aware of that track record.
If there's an upside to coming forward about this stuff, I'm not aware of it. Like nothing about this has been easy or enjoyable or like even rewarding.
There is zero in it for you, except for, like you said, you couldn't live with yourself if you didn't.
Yeah, and I kind of tried to handle this issue on my own quietly, and like I said, it was still like really manifesting itself in other ways. This had never happened to me before, and I never thought it would. And so when it did, my immediate response was just like pure denial. Like, man, if I just pretend this didn't happen, I can just keep working and things will be great. Like, it's kind of this trick that your brain plays on you to help you survive, right? That's what your brain is programmed to do.
Right. And it's even worse when it's from someone you know and trust.
Yeah. And once that denial started to wear off over a couple of weeks, I was just totally unraveling, like as a person. And then there's the shame and guilt about not coming forward right away. And I could tell like this individual and I had stopped talking. And there was one weekend where the whole crew was going out. This individual was going with them. And I'd made arrangements to go meet the crew where they were going out. But I had secured my own Airbnb, a private place for me to sleep, obviously, so I don't have to be in close contact with this individual. And so we all show up at our destination that weekend. And actually 4 other crew members, once I got to this destination, they just stopped responding to me. And one of them lied about where they were so that we couldn't meet up, right? And that was like grade school level heartbreak, right? To get like stood up by these people that you really trust and love. And that's when that opened my eyes to the fact that like, okay, maybe I'm trying to handle this quietly, but this individual is obviously like saying things to crew members and it's having a real impact.
Well, yeah. they need to gather their team, and they have to, posture so that they can make themselves look good, because when you're calling somebody out, that's what they do, is they go and they start getting their walls around them. And the easiest way to do that is to get the tribe that you're trusting and get them to believe in him more. Like, even, it's just, you see it all the time, no matter what, whether it's sexual assault or just like a minor conflict. And that's what kids do on the playground. And that's exactly what they do in adulthood too. And he knew that would crush you that way. But if he got everybody on his side, it would discredit you. And it seems to really worked out for him.
Yeah, it did, and these particular crew members were also rookies on the crew. And so, he was kind of in this senior leadership role.
They were very impressionable.
Yeah, well, and you walk onto a shot crew, you have that standing expectation of duty, integrity, and respect. And people in leadership roles, you're automatically just looking up to them and assuming the best, right? Like, man, these people must be dialed and they must be really solid, good people to be in these roles. But that's really not always the case, And
well, and women in these jobs, these kind of professions, they're, as society, we're looking at them to fail. We're looking, not even consciously. We're not doing it consciously. It's just we're like, oh man, she seems like such an, oh, whoops, she screwed that up. Yeah, she's just another one of those typical females. Like, why did we even pick her up? Oh, that one's really great. Yeah, I knew it. She sucks. Like, you really, the bubble is very fine, and it can be popped so easily because does that make sense? Like, it's, you immediately went from like, oh, she's one of the cool ones. Yeah, man, she works so hard. She's great. And you immediately went to the problem because, oh, you got assaulted, and she's just another woman that's going to be here and bitch and screw everything up for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, this assault, like, yes, it obviously like really impacted me, but like, it's something that weighs on your mind that like, man, if I come forward, I'm going to like shut down work for 19 other people. And like, I don't want to do that. Right. Like, that's
what slowed me down when I was on a team, because I was afraid that it would have halted everything for like 58 people. I mean, completely for them, their families, the incident that they were to go on. Like, people don't realize the weight that that comes with it. And you just want to be a good girl and move forward and not say anything and pretend like everything's okay. But you had your eyes open more and you realized that this was kind of a chronic thing for this guy. And I'm really glad that you did, because I don't think you explained that piece to me before. That justifies even more why you were speaking. And so everybody's default is like, well, she should go to the cops. It's law enforcement's problem, which that's also what the agency's answer is. They're like, it's law enforcement's problem. But that's just as much the frustration of that. And I'll have you explain that part to me. But I want everyone to know that just kind of depends on where you work. Like, there doesn't seem to be this standard location. Location can be kind of different, but it doesn't even have to be a conviction in court for there to be a conflict between people or something that a behavior that's unbecoming an employee of that agency, for them to do something about it. They don't have to wait until somebody's gone through a conviction to be like, okay, clearly there's a conflict. We need to take care of both of them and do something about it. But it sounds like they were weighing on the cops maybe a little bit. But, tell me what your experience as an assault victim was with the police department.
So this was a really rural area with a small police department. And I guess I should even start with, when I initially reported this to my supervisor, he actually, this is maybe agency guidelines, I'm not sure, but he actually called police to our Hotshot base. And so it was quite a spectacle, right? Like, the whole crew is there watching this police officer come and talk to me in a tiny little room by myself. Those police that my superintendent called, they actually weren't even the right jurisdiction for this case. So basically they showed up and talked to me for 5 seconds and were like, oh yeah, this didn't happen here. Okay,
so
bye.
So they had to be not where it was reported, but where it happened is what.
Yes, and so I ended up going.
I reported it to another jurisdiction, but they were more than happy to take the report. They were more than happy to do all of the detective work, and then they just tied in and corresponded with where it happened. So that's really disappointing how they handled that.
Yeah, and the way this police officer framed it was, oh, you'll have to repeat the story again. Like, if you tell it to me, you're going to have to repeat it to the police in the correct jurisdiction as well.
That was code for I don't want to do the paperwork.
Yeah. I've found out that that's a huge cop-out for people who don't want the hassle. Like, the opposite of being assaulted is having choices and having control of your own situation. And multiple times I was sitting there listening to some dude tell me that I shouldn't talk about it again, right? And he has no knowledge of anything of what it's like, right? But yeah, people just putting those words in your mouth and framing it as oh, they're trying to help you. But really, if you wanted to help someone, you could walk up and say, hey, how can I help you? Right. What can we talk about?
Too sensitive for them to want to deal with. They want black and white, simple. I always say, if it's so much easier if you just, like I was saying, either get attacked right there in front of everybody at the workplace, or if you get assaulted and beat in a back alley by somebody you never knew. Those are so much easier. I'm not just saying oh my God, bad on the agency, bad on the supervisor, shame on them. It is a confusing situation, and it takes true leadership to figure out how to navigate this. And I'm really disappointed that they couldn't dig deeper and take care of both of you better, because they're not serving you or the crew or that guy or the agency in how they handled it. Not your superintendent, every level, all the way up. And the police department, these situations are just fuzzy. And I see where the holes are in everybody's situation, but at the same time, they need to do something. And I honestly feel like the agency would have been protecting themselves a hell of a lot more if they would have made sure that you stayed employed and had a job this season somewhere. That would be a lot safer. So, but as a seasonal employee, it's just easier for them to not do anything or say anything. So with the police department, I didn't mean to drag away from that. So they blew you off. So then did you end up going to talk to the correct agency?
Yeah, I ended up going to the correct jurisdiction and talking to those police who the detective I spoke with at first was very supportive, very encouraging for me to come forward with information. And I definitely expressed hesitation. I know how the law works, right? I know how courts are, that you have to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, right? You have to have physical evidence and things like that, things I knew I didn't have. And so I expressed this hesitation to the detective, and he encouraged me to still report it and pursue an investigation. But at the end of the day, there really wasn't much to that investigation. The detective actually ended up going directly with my superintendent. So actually my boss was more privy to my case details than I was sometimes. Like the detective and my boss just communicated directly.
Oh
and
what?
the police, yeah, that also I think was wildly inappropriate, right? The superintendent had no
You should have had
really
no
like
dog in the fight. It should have been when the
no,
police
no,
department comes into play. It should have been you and that guy, and that is it.
yes, because obviously, there's just a whole nother can of worms bringing in the superintendent of this crew who has vested interests and duties to his agency and whatever. And he has, he wasn't there. He has no, like you said, no dog in the fight, cannot offer any relevant information to the sexual assault that happened. But that seemed like a big role in
He can sure skew the detective's view of it.
Yeah.
That's what's frustrating.
Yeah, and so the police ended up just closing my case pretty quickly, and the police chief actually, when they were closing my case, he made sure to tell me that his police department in particular received a lot of false sexual assault claims, which I think is wildly inappropriate. Yeah, and if you do the research, sexual assaults are not made at a false rate any higher than any other crime, like robbery. Like it is statistically no higher. And so for that police chief to come in and tell me that his department gets these all the time was really...
And you said it in a way that made you feel like, yeah, you're wasting your time. We get these all the time. Yeah, whatever. We don't really have time for this, and it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And the detective, after I filed my initial report, he was telling me he's very busy, had a huge caseload. He's just this one detective in the whole county there, I think.
And I wish people could see that all of these actions, all of these treatments they're way worse on you than the initial assault. Like you were saying, you get assaulted twice, 3 times, 4 times. It's not just like that initial thing. It really goes away. It's all the aftermath that is what rips you apart psychologically for a long time.
Yeah, and my initial interview with this detective was several hours, and it wasn't recorded. And so this detective was kind of taking these scribbling notes all over this notepad, and it looked like chaos to me. But I was like, maybe he's got a method. He's probably been doing this a while. And then when the police report was finally published, I have to FOIA the police report to get a copy of my own case.
That is shocking to me.
Closure.
Like that's crazy. Because
yeah, well, I also got the case closure and realized that the police had published false information in the final report, like pretty critical information that was completely false, and I had to go through a whole other process to get that corrected. And at the end of the day, the detective writes an amendment that's a separate sheet of paper from the original report, so you could still get the first page of the report and never know that it contains false information.
Wow. God damn it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating from top to bottom. And so these two, and I get it, you guys, these two things are not connected. The agency, the federal agency she worked for, and this law enforcement agency, these are two separate, different problems. Got it. I totally see that. So let's wipe away the bad police work and just focus on, now you've got, okay, so you're like, well, so sure, if they had the police looked into it and they're like, he's going down for rape, of course it would have been like a 2 to 3 year case situation, right? So, but let's say they said, okay, he is being charged, here come my words. He's being charged with sexual assault. This is da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so that might have been something the agency could take a little more seriously. Let's say they said, okay, he's convicted. Okay, that's something they could have taken a lot more seriously. So now they don't have something to stick with legally from the police department, but they do still have 2 employees who have a serious conflict, and there is a better way to handle this. So even all you guys listening out there, even if we wipe that piece away, you've still got 2 people who have a pretty sensitive conflict. Now, do you just write one of them off and throw them aside and trash their whole career and then let the other one thrive? Is that how we would handle if you just weren't getting along with someone on the crew, if you guys were knocking heads about something? No, it's not. So why is that okay here? Why is that okay for them to be like, well, the police work didn't come out to where there was anything wrong, so we're just going to write it off? And that's where we're missing. That's the gap here. So how do you as like a seasonal employee and looking back at this, what is your vision of what they can do better, how they could handle this better?
Uh, well, like you kind of hit the nail on the head that they still have this conflict between a very serious conflict between two employees where there's already a power differential, and we know that the court of law, functions at a very extreme level that, rape victims often don't get any resolution in the court of law, right? And so it's the agency's duty to still handle what's at hand. Just because police case is closed, it doesn't mean that there's nothing saying that it was a false claim, just like there isn't evidence supporting it the other way, right? A police department case closure, it can't carry that much weight into the agency, right? Because you still have those two people. They've got careers on the line. They still potentially have to work together, and so it comes down to that leadership at the local level, that they are in this really difficult place where they have to make serious efforts and be really uncomfortable to work towards a resolution by speaking with these individuals involved, right? And asking the victim what they want to talk about rather than telling them that they shouldn't talk anymore,
Right. Well, and just acknowledging both of you, whether they believed you or him or both of you, just acknowledging you both, saying they value both of you and they want a win-win for you both. Sure, they can't take any action on him because there's no proof for them. It's just your word against his, but they handle things like this all the time that are not for sexual assault. So they're dealing with conflicts all the time. They don't do it well. I mean, we all know that they don't do it well, but some supervisors handle it well just on their lower level, and you never even hear about it because it was handled properly. Some crews in the past have had boxing gloves and throw them out on the front yard and had to beat the crap out of each other. I think we finally moved past that. But they have ways of handling it. So, and I can't help but wonder, how would they have handled this if he had thrown you down and raped you in the buggy on the clock? How would they handle that? I really can't think that it would have been a whole lot better.
I can't think so either. And, you present that scenario. My first question is like, would I have even reported that right away? Like, I don't know.
Situation. You're in the same conflict because you're conflicted just like they are for different reasons, but it's not that easy. And, you put an immediate target on your heart with all of this. And I'm so glad that you're speaking up. I know it's so hard to do, but it's so important that we have whoever's listening to this to think and dig deeper, because if you haven't dealt with something this sensitive yet in your career, you're going to, if you keep moving up. And it might be while you're running a crew, it might be while you're running a region, somehow you're going to be facing it. And it's really important that you find a creative way to handle it so that look at this gal. She is smart. She is, you're, for a seasonal employee, you're very versed also in how the agency works, but she's smart and she is on top of things. Clearly she's an asset for anybody to have. She's not just out. I mean, there's no benefit to her to do this other than doing the right thing. And if we can't encourage our employees to do that for something like this, can't expect them to do it for safety issues, can't expect them to do it for liability or financial reasons that protect the agency. So how do we handle these situations and take care of people like this? And let's say that you were in a situation where what you were reporting was baloney. It wasn't true, never happened. You were just pissed off at the guy. You wanted to report this rape and get him in trouble. That's possible too. Things like that can happen. So those people also deserve protection. He should also be treated in a certain way in this situation, but it needs to be handled better. And assumptions can't just be made. And guys can't just rally the troop and turn everybody on you or turn everybody on whoever's reporting it. It's the same thing if somebody's behaving unsafely and somebody reports them for unsafe behavior. They're going to start turning people on that person that brought attention to them because they're protecting themselves. So there is no magic answer to this. I get that. But if anybody's listening and you run a shot crew and you want one hell of a woman there, give me a holler. Let me know that you've got a position open and you're actually willing to take care of people and give good people a place to be, because the way that she's being treated now is not fair. So you've been putting in for positions on other crews ever since, right? And how's that going?
It's not going great. This was part of the warning my fellow crew member gave me, that fire is a small world, and my leadership from my past crew probably has connections to some of these crews that I've applied for this season.
They're all
That
in a
seemed
meeting
very,
right now. They're all in the same room today.
yeah,
All the superintendents are in a same. I mean, so yeah, fire is a tiny world, but then you take the hotshot world, it's minute. So as we speak, they're all talking crap and doing good things. There's so many great people that are hotshot superintendents. But yeah, it's globally or it's nationally huge. But like today, they're all gathered in the same room for a training. So it's tiny.
yeah, and like going back to something leadership could do better. It's like I understand, these guys who are hotshot superintendents. I understand that they'll probably go their whole life without getting raped and never having to worry about it. And that's great. I'm really, really happy for them, right? But they don't have to completely understand or even be able to completely empathize to be able to respect someone who this has happened to. Like, they don't have to get what it's like to be that violated and that traumatized, but they still have to make an effort to respect it and to listen and respect that this experience that this person's had is, has a lot of negative impact.
You know what a lot of people's answer to this is
What?
don't hire women. If we don't have a chick
Yeah.
on the crew, there won't be a problem. And
Yeah.
that's no shit. Like, that's across the board. There are a lot of people that really do think that way. And this is a shining example because now they're like, if we didn't have a female, this wouldn't have been an issue, and that's the assumption that gets made. But I think they need to, if you can't handle having a woman on your crew because you're afraid your guys might rape her, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, so where are you going from here? So you're still applying for jobs, hoping for, you don't deserve just any job. You deserve a good job on a good crew or a good place. And what's crazy is you're putting up with this, and where do you want to be? You want to be fighting fire on a hotshot crew still because that's what you love and that's what you want to do. And you're not going to let them take this away from you. You're not going to let them ruin this passion that you have. And damn right, you shouldn't. But they're hurting you so much more. They're assaulting you more every day by anybody that is trying to ruin your name or say that you're a problem, whatever that is. Shame on them that they can't manage their people well enough to have you there. So what's your plan now? What are you doing moving forward?
So, I very recently got some news that it was turned down by some crews that seemed like they had, a good potential for hire. So this is pretty recent. I'm kind of scrambling at the moment to figure out what to do. I don't think it's really a choice of where I want to end up at the moment. It's more what's left at this point in the hiring process, which is pretty late. Isn't to say that there's not great opportunities out there, right? But
what are your career aspirations? What are you wanting to do in the next, where do you see yourself in 5 years if you weren't dealing with this crap?
Well, I really want to stay on a hotshot crew for the foreseeable future. I think, 5 years is probably reasonable. I wanted to end up in a leadership role, a squatty position, and I wanted to make a career out of fire, go potentially into the IMT, the incident management team positions later on in life. But, things like this, they really put all of that up in the air, right?
Yeah, U.S. Forest Service, Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, we're talking to you. You guys have, look right here. This is why so I was just looking at the pictures of the National Hotshot meeting yesterday. Not one woman in them anywhere. So many training and meeting pictures that I see, no women, very few. And it frustrates me every day. And I'm like, I don't want to hire women just to hire women. That's not the point. But look at this right here is the point, is you listening to you, talking to you. You people in the Washington office, listen to this right now, because this is the kind of woman that, because we're not able to figure out how to handle it, is slipping through the cracks. She is a strong firefighter. She wants to keep going. She emulates the kind of woman that we want moving up in our ranks. And look what's happening. She's slipping right through our fingers. So what, we want strong women that'll just shut the hell up and keep moving forward and not ever report things like this? Come on. It's slipping away, you guys. Let's grab a hold of her and however many are out there that we're letting slip away and do the right thing. Do something bigger. Do something better. I promised that is why I stepped away from the agency, so I could have conversations like this, so that I could open some eyes and make things better for everybody somehow, some way, in the hard way, because they weren't willing to do it in the agency. They made that clear. So I created a podcast so that I could get the leaders to listen to me and realize that they got to do it different. They're not doing it right, and they need to have the hard conversations. Call people like me, call people like her, ask what is going on and what we can do better. Don't be afraid. Everybody's so worried about liability, but you know what? They spend so much money and effort through all these legal fees by not doing the right thing, by not confronting it. They would save so much money and retain so many good people if they would just confront it and deal with it without making it go through so many layers. Like, you could be right now thriving, looking forward to your next season, planning out the next 3 to 5 years of your career, if they could have just been bigger people while dealing with this. And I certainly hope that they're listening to this and they grow from it, because the people on the inside are going to know exactly who we're talking about.
How long has the agency been talking about their struggle with retention of women? You know, like, they kind of keep repeating the same thing they've always done, expecting different results.
Right. And I know that this certainly isn't going to be a recruitment call or a recruitment interview. Like, we're not screaming to women going like, this is the place to be. And that's not my point. That is not my point.
Yeah.
But we need to grow and we need to make it better.
You know, I've met women who have been on Hotshot crews and had great experiences and had very, you know, respectful and great crew members who really watched out for them and stuck up for them. And that's great. Like, that happens out there, right? But there's also the flip side that is also a reality, right? That's just not getting acknowledged, getting swept under the rug. And since this happened to me, and I've been fairly open about it, and I've actually reached out to and met several other women who have experienced similar cases in the Forest Service or another federal agency, and they just leave that crew or quit that job and they don't go back. You know, not all of them ever even came forward and said anything. Like, some of them just shouldered this awful experience and left and never looked back. You know, I don't think the agency realizes what they're missing in those people who they don't show back up and they don't know why. And you know, sometimes
even take the time to say why. It's just shoved up. It's under the rug.
Yeah. Like you said, there's no, you know, magic solution to all this, but I think some honest, genuine effort needs to be made on the agency's behalf, especially even in supporting their leadership at the local level and how to handle these things.
Oh, damn, girl. I am so glad that I just want you to be able to have a great 2020 fire season. Like, that's what I want.
It'll be good. You know,
Like
I'll make it good.
Out there that are listening to this, that, you know, if somebody's looking for a good gal to have on their crew and they want to help show that hotshot crews out there there are ones out there that have good leaders and know how to lead a team, reach out to me, let me know, and I'll connect you guys.
Yeah.
How far are you willing to, like, I know you're kind of in the middle of the country. Like, how are you willing to move out and go someplace else, or how far are you willing to travel?
Yeah, anywhere, man. I'm still at that point in my life where I'm really enjoying the transitions and going to new places, and I've got a few home bases strung out across the country, so I'm pretty happy anywhere.
Now, what would you tell, because clearly you still love the job, you still want to do it, so you've got like a 18-year-old girl just coming up and out and she wants to start going to work, put herself through college. What would you tell her if she came to you and was like, hey, I'd really like to be on a hotshot crew? You know,
overall, I would still be 110% supportive of that mission. I got the opportunity to teach some entry-level fire classes in November, and it was very eye-opening looking at, you know, staring at these faces of, all 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and quite a good amount of women in these fire classes. And, you know, over the course of our week that we had together, you know, I made an effort to just show support that a couple of these gals were really into it and were thinking about being on a hand crew or a hotshot crew. And so, you know, I'm providing them all this information on how to get better at their pull-ups, you know, some of their physical training they need to start now. And I don't want to scare anyone about, you know, these things that could potentially happen. So I don't bring that up. What I do is just, I gave the whole class, you know, my cell number and you know, I tell them if anything difficult in their career happens and they just want to talk about it or bounce ideas or get suggestions that, they could call me at any point in their career, even if it's 10 years down the road, right?
You guys, are you listening to this? Washington office, people in leadership positions, like you're a great recruiter, and because that's how I feel too. People ask me like, well, I know that, should I tell my daughter not to even? I'm like, no, that is not my point. I'm not saying don't do this, don't go for it. But that right there, you're mentoring young women, and thank you for doing that, because that says so much. Like this isn't a vendetta against firefighting or guys in fire service or the agency. It's still a job that you love, and that's what's hurting so much, is it feels like it's being ripped away from you. So they would be damn lucky to have you. Any of the agencies would, clearly, and I hope that they can see that. And if
I really think the more gals that, there's women coming into fire, right? It seems like they're dropping out at some point, and retention's kind of an issue. And I think, at that point, all you can do is just offer your support for these people. And like I said, a lot of women have had similar harassment or, issues at work that they never even came forward or talked to anyone about. And it's like providing that forum where people are comfortable to approach you and to discuss some of these things that may, eventually lead to them leaving fire, and just having that ear to listen and understand and help where you can,
Absolutely.
I think that's like the best thing you can do at this point. And, even on the crew that I was on this past summer, my very first assignment, we were riding in a rig with our squad leader, and, he expressed some views that I see the value, but I also very strongly disagree with. He expressed that he felt his duty as a squad leader. He's still in his mid-20s, has only been on one crew, but he felt that it was his duty to weed out people that he didn't think were good for fire. So his whole mindset was geared towards, like, he gave the example of, if he thought someone was not a good fit for fire, then he would enter their time differently than someone who he thought was good for fire.
Oh, what?
And so, yeah. And, I don't think he realizes that, like, number one, this is probably illegal. Number two, you're not helping anyone. He's still really,
I agree
really
with
young, and
people out. And like, if somebody they're not cut out for the job. Yeah. I think that you need to be a good supervisor and guide them down another path if you can't get them to improvement. But, I thought that's where you were going with this story. Like, they're just kind of like, you need to toughen up, kid, or you're out. Not, I'm going to falsify their times and screw with them.
No, I agree to some extent with you need to be tough, and you need to work to develop and improve all the time. And if you're not improving, then you do need to ask yourself what you're doing there at some point. I totally agree with that. But just that, like, at that lower level, that there's leadership already, like, trying to gear the system against people that they don't immediately see fit. Like, it just seems like a road to disaster.
Well, that's that nasty culture basis right there. That's what breeds it. And then they teach somebody else to do that, and it ripples forever.
Yeah, like what if there was someone that, had a place in fire but just did things differently than this person, And like, those people are going to have to work so much harder to get where they're going. If you got a squad leader who's not going to give you time off for an injury or something, like.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I'm glad that he had the idiot guts to admit that that's what he was doing, because that gives you an example right there. There's a lot of people out there pulling that crap. A lot.
Yeah. And I genuinely, I don't even know if he, like, realized how wrong that is.
It became so natural because he was probably taught that way.
And, like I said, there's, like, people, anyone in their 20s, even in their 30s, like, you're still young, and you still need to, like, we talk about being a student of fire, but you need to be a student of life, like, constantly when you're in a leadership role.
Yes.
Like, you should always be striving to learn something new, and you should be looking for the things that you don't understand, rather than, like, trying to confirm what you think is true, which is what so many of us naturally do. I'm guilty of it. You really need to be.
Fire management is just like 5% of the job. The rest of it's like human management and, human factor. Yeah. And like I said earlier, like, in a leadership role, you have to be committed to understanding, rather than, like, listening just to defend yourself or defend your agency. Like,
leaders in fire, they have a lot on their plate, and we can't expect them to like be psychologists or know how to deal with trauma like this, right? But they still need to be committed to respecting it, respecting that experience, right, and acknowledging they don't know what they don't know about
right,
it,
and seeking above that they do. And that's like I was talking about earlier. Some people seek that guidance from outside, whether it's from employee relations or above, and because they don't know what they don't know, then they put all their eggs in that basket and figure if somebody on the other side of the computer is telling them what to do, it must be right. But we have to question that stuff too. Like, we got to question the things that just don't feel quite right. Like, I'm sure somebody on the path that you've been going on at one point was like, oh, I don't know. Is this how we need to be handling this? I promise you, people have been thinking about that, but it was easier for them to go, I don't know, it's not my problem, and let it be somebody else's problem, and they just moved on. That happens all the time. So
there was another fella on the crew this year that I didn't mention who I wasn't even close with. We were on different squads. We didn't really have like any sort of personal friendship or anything like that outside of work, but he eventually like caught wind of what was going on and asked me if I wanted to talk about it, and I did tell him a few things, and he was just like so supportive. At first I feel like just, the way the rest of the crew acted, I'm thinking like, oh, this guy's like fishing for like ways to discredit or like say it was my fault or something. But I started telling the story, and he was just like, holy shit, I can't believe it's being handled this way. And
that was helpful validation. That was good that he was able to give you that and talk to you about that, because a lot of times that pack mentality takes over and nobody's even willing to have that conversation or say that or see it that way, but then when they do, and then they don't know what to do. They're like, wow, this needs to be different, and they can't do anything. And but I'm glad that you have had those people that stuck by you. I mean, just the fact that even if it's just some seasonal on a crew is like, you guys aren't handling this right, I'm not coming back because you're not handling this situation right. That right there screams integrity, and it takes a lot to do that, and it means a lot. And that might be the only support you ever find in this, but man, that is a really big, loud vow of support.
Yeah. I don't, like when I first came forward about what happened on this crew, and especially when I was isolated, I mean, it was one of the darkest periods of my life. Like, it's, mental health is something else that firefighters don't really talk about as a whole, but I had never struggled quite like that as that week that I was isolated and dealing with coming forward about all this stuff. You kind of another acute trauma, like you said, it's like getting reassaulted, right? And this time it's starting to add up by this point, right? It's starting to be cumulative, and I was really, really struggling. And the two folks on my crew who did just acknowledge what happened, and even though they couldn't do anything about it, that they acknowledged and were like, wow, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm here if you need me. Like, that just made a world of difference for me. It might seem silly,
people need to hear that, because they need to know that it does matter that they show their support like that, and just letting you know that they're there and that it sucks. Even if you're just getting down in the hole with them and going like, this sucks. Like, you shouldn't have to be dealing with this. And sometimes that's all it takes is to help somebody. And like, how many people are we driving towards really ugly places, even to suicide, without even realizing it, because we're not handling these situations better? I can't help but wonder. We're either pushing them to alcoholism or pill use, or like someplace where they just don't have to be, because we're not managing it properly, and we're not willing to try harder. We're not willing to go out and above, and there's a better way. You got to find it.
Yeah.
Well, God, thank you for talking like this. And this really, like, I don't think you realize how many people this is going to, it's going to hit. And there's going to be some people hear this and at first are going to be like, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like, that's what we get for having women. But it's going to make them think. Even if they have that attitude, it's going to make them think. And if they do cross a situation like this, they're going to remember hearing this, and they're going to deal with it differently, or at least pay better attention to it. And so I think this is really important that you're doing this. And, it's so hard to tell. I remember talking to you last year, like, about I knew that it would suck. And I knew that it was going to suck and it was killing you and ripping you apart. But I was just so impressed that you were willing to still speak up and do the right thing. And I mean, there's not going to be a woman, you guys, in the fire service that's going to jump up and scream rape for fun. It ruins your life.
No.
So if you ever think that, you better knock it off. Like there is no big settlement to win. There is nothing to further your career. It's going to crush you. So if somebody comes to you with something like that, I don't care if you believe them or not, you better take it seriously because like she said, it's the secondary trauma now. And you are no better than that rapist if you're not going to handle it properly. You are hurting her just as bad, if not worse. So you've got to think about that and handle it better. That's all I have. Thank you so much for doing this with me. We'll definitely be in touch. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I want to reiterate that, for all the leadership out there who hasn't personally experienced something like this, either done to themselves or done to crew members or something, I can't stress enough, like, it's going to be really, really difficult to deal with these situations and you're going to be really uncomfortable, but you still have to make these efforts of respect and integrity and try to understand people. I think that's really the takeaway. Like, if you're in leadership and you find yourself assuming the worst in people, you probably shouldn't be in leadership, right? That's going to shape how you react to everything. If you're just assuming people have bad motivations, right? You should just take yourself out of the game for us.
Right. Yeah, you better remove yourself before somebody else starts falsifying your times and moves you out.
Yeah.
I still can't believe that.
Yep.
All right, girl. Well, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it, and we will stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Up in Flames. It's been, a bit of a difficult one to listen to because I know it kind of throws some triggers for some people, and it also, you've got the people out there that just don't want to hear it, and I appreciate for those of you that wanted to have an open mind and think about how you're going to deal with this if something like this happens. No matter what, someone made a decision to make a poor choice. Her claims, which this superintendent and all the management had to deal with, were her letting them know that she was raped by someone while she was verbally and physically fighting to make it stop. And man, I wish that the answer was so easy to where it would be so easy for you supervisors and leaders out there to be like, well, let's check this box. This is how we deal with this. But it's not. It takes some deep digging and, like she said, some hard conversations. Because someone made a choice to harm her. And that choice wrecked her. It was wrecking the crew. It was wrecking everything. It wasn't her choice to speak up. It wasn't her choice to be there in his presence. These things are going to happen again. We're going to hear about them again. And what we need to do is think outside the box and get creative and not just let it be as simple as kicking down some complaint down the road and letting it take its course. Think about what you're going to do when you have this uncomfortable conflict between two people you supervise. Who are you going to separate? Who are you not going to separate? How are you going to handle it? Who are you going to bring in to help you with the situation? One thing is for sure is that the process that the U.S. Forest Service has going right now on, there's the complaint process, but then they have this, what was supposed to be the mid-answer to everything is this hotline. That's where she has ended up in the middle of, is this hotline complaint that her supervisor called in for. And guess what? After all these months, she's still waiting. She hasn't heard anything. They just left her in limbo. And then that part where the superintendent was working with the detective and the cop, come on, you guys. Let's think about what we're doing here. But right now, the Forest Service and their hotline system is broken. I just talked to somebody yesterday about how they're trying to make it better, but they need to acknowledge how messed up it is. We need solutions, you guys, and creating a system like that hotline complaint system and then letting it turn into something just ugly, that was a really bad deal. It's lost a lot of confidence. People have lost complete confidence in that system that was built to help them. Confidentiality is out the window. Reprisal is even worse than it ever was. Let's go, you guys. We have got to do something better. You have got to do something better for the people. I am open if you would like to talk to me and figure out something a little bit better, what you can do. What you are doing right now isn't working. I know there's probably a lot of cases out there we don't know about, but trust me, I'm hearing about them multiple times a day from different people across the country, all trying to navigate situations with these tools that they have in front of them. And I am not hearing a lot of success stories. I am hearing a few, but I'm not hearing a lot. I'm hearing a lot more crashes. There are a lot of really good federal employees slipping away. It's really unfortunate. I won't go down any further down that road. Hopefully I'm inspiring some of you to think a little differently. Be a good bystander. Choose the hard right over easy silence. Not just when it comes to speaking up, but when it comes to being a supervisor or manager and you've got a difficult situation at your feet that you need to deal with. You got to rise up. Let's do something better. And don't forget to lead with fire. You guys have a great day. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information. We need more patrons to help fight the good fight. So please check it out, become a patron, and thanks again. You have a great day.